Have you ever wondered why life feels heavier the moment you try to control everything? Why every plan you tighten slips right through your fingers as if the universe is quietly working against you? What if the secret you have chased for years is not in gripping harder, but finally learning to release your grip? What if real power begins the moment you stop fighting and start understanding? Part 1. The weight you cannot see. There is a moment in every person's life when they finally stop running long enough to notice the weight they have been carrying. It is a strange kind of burden. You cannot see it, you cannot measure it, yet it follows you everywhere you go. It settles behind your ribs when you wake up, tightens your breath at noon, and crawls into bed with you at night. You feel it most when the world grows quiet, when there is nothing to distract you from the pressure on your chest. This weight is not made of stone or metal. It is made of expectations, demands, fears, and the belief that if you do not hold the world together, everything will fall apart. I once carried that weight myself, although I did not know it then. I believed, as many people do, that success belonged to those who forced their way into it. I was convinced that if I held tightly enough to my plans, if I fought hard enough against every obstacle, I could shape the world exactly as I wanted it. For years I pushed. I worked late into nights that felt endless. I clung to goals with a kind of desperation that people mistook for ambition. I believed that control was power. I believed that surrender was weakness. But something unusual happened. The harder I pushed, the heavier everything became. It was as if life itself resisted me. Plans collapsed. Opportunities slipped away. People left. Money came and went like water through my hands. Every time I tightened my grip, the more pressure I felt inside myself. It was not the challenges that were breaking me. It was the belief that I had to control everything in order to succeed. It took me years to understand the truth, and perhaps it is the same truth you are now ready to hear. The greatest weight a person carries is the illusion of control. This illusion tells you to fix every problem. It tells you to hold together what is already falling apart. It tells you to chase people who are never meant to stay. It tells you that your worth is proven by how much you can endure. So you endure. You grip harder. You fight battles that are not yours. You stay loyal to situations that drain you. You try to explain yourself to people who never intended to understand. You believe that this is strength, but it is not. It is exhaustion disguised as responsibility. I once asked myself a question that changed the direction of my entire life. What would happen if I let go? Not because I was giving up, but because I had finally understood that gripping harder was not bringing me closer to my dreams. It was pushing them further away. This question would later become the foundation of my own success and the success of many people I have mentored. It is a question Napoleon Hill himself often challenged readers to ask in his teachings. Hill taught that the mind becomes powerful only when it releases fear, doubt, and the need to control what cannot be controlled. He believed that clarity comes not from tension but from calm. He believed that desire must be paired with trust, that purpose must move with faith, not force. When I finally loosened my grip on the things I was trying to bend into shape, something remarkable happened. Life did not fall apart. It began to fall into place. The opportunities one chased for years appeared without effort. The people who drained me drifted out of my life. The people who supported me walked in with ease. The solutions I once struggled to invent came to me in moments of stillness. I realized that letting go does not mean abandoning your dreams. It means releasing the emotional chains that choke them. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is choosing clarity over chaos. It is choosing peace over fear. It is recognizing that you do not need to force outcomes to receive what is meant for you. You may be asking yourself, if I stop controlling everything, will my life not fall apart? I asked myself the same question. But here is the truth. Life falls apart only when you try to control the pieces that were never yours to hold. It comes together the moment you focus on the one thing that was always your responsibility, and that is yourself. There is a reason Hill spoke so often about the power of the mind. A calm mind sees opportunities a fearful mind misses. A confident mind attracts solutions a desperate mind repels. A focused mind knows when to act and when to step back. When I stopped fighting the world and learned to stand in it, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. A strength that comes from trusting the process, not controlling the outcome. Think of a storm. Most people try to outrun it. They hide from it. They shout at it, hoping it will pass. But storms do not respond to fear. They do not retreat when you demand it. They move with their own rhythm. In life, you cannot control the storm. You can only control your posture within it. You can stand. You can breathe. You can hold your ground with calm authority and confidence. When you do, the storm eventually passes, and you remain standing. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours. It means you stop allowing fear to sit in the driver's seat. It means you stop sacrificing your peace for the illusion of control. The real masters of life are not the ones who fight every battle. They choose their battles. They do not react. They respond. They do not chase. They attract. They do not beg for stability. They create it within themselves. This is the doorway to everything you desire. It is the beginning of clarity, peace, abundance, and strength. It is the first step into a life where you are no longer held down by invisible weight, but lifted by purpose and trust. You were never meant to control the storm. You were meant to find your stillness inside it. And that stillness is where your true power begins. If you want, I can now write part 2, 1,000 words, in the same style. Engaging hook for part 2. What if the storm you fear is not your enemy at all? What if the thunder that shakes your windows is only testing the strength of what stands inside you? And what if the greatest power you will ever discover is not the ability to control the world, but the ability to remain unshaken when the world refuses to obey? Part 2. The power the storm cannot touch. There comes a moment in every life when a person realizes the truth they have avoided for years. The world will not always bend to your plans. Life will not always follow the script you wrote in your mind. You can worry for days and plan for months and push with all the force you can gather, yet the storms of life will still rise without warning. They will come with winds that ignore your demands and waves that refuse to settle. The question is not how to stop the rain, but how to stand tall inside it. I learned this lesson during a season when nothing I attempted would go right. I had plans for my future. I had routines that kept me feeling safe. Everything was arranged in careful order. People admired my discipline. They thought I had mastered life. What they did not know was that all my discipline was tied to control. I thought that if I worked hard enough and prepared well enough, life would reward me with predictability. But life had other ideas. One morning, I woke to a piece of news that shattered the foundation I had built. It was the kind of moment that knocks the breath out of your chest. Everything I counted on disappeared in a single sentence. I felt the storm rise inside me. My first reaction was panic. How do I fix this? How do I stop this collapse? How do I bring things back to what they were? But no matter how tightly I tried to hold the pieces, they slipped through my fingers. My plans did not listen to my commands. My fear did not change the situation. And for the first time in my life, I understood a truth that Napoleon Hill often hinted at in his teachings. True strength is not found in domination. It is not measured by your ability to subdue the world. It is measured by your ability to remain steady when the world refuses to obey you. When the storm grew louder, I did something I had never done before. I stopped fighting. I stopped shouting at circumstances that could not hear me. I stopped demanding that life return to what it had been. Instead, I stood still. I let the rain fall. I let the wind test my posture. I let the challenge reveal the depth of my roots. And when I finally stopped resisting, something remarkable happened. The storm did not stop, but its power over me changed. The thunder roared, but it no longer entered my chest. The waves rose, but they did not move the ground beneath me. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to have composure. Composure is the quiet strength that comes from a disciplined mind. It is the ability to remain calm when plans are interrupted. It is the confidence to stand steady even when nothing around you feels certain. It is the inner command that separates the anxious mind from the powerful one. Control is a desperate belief that if you tighten your grip, life will obey. Composure is the deeper truth that you do not need to control anything to be powerful. You only need to command yourself. Control dies with the first disruption. It shatters at the first sign of trouble. But composure, true composure, survives every storm. It outlasts disappointments. It rises above uncertainty. It remains steady long after your plans have fallen apart. People spend years trying to build control. They create detailed schedules. They stack expectations on top of each other. They build routines that they treat like fragile altars. And when life disrupts these routines, they collapse. They react with fear, anger, and confusion. They believe the world has betrayed them. But the world never promised control. It only promised change. And change requires a different kind of strength. Hill taught that no man succeeds by demanding the world bend to his will. He succeeds by mastering himself. He succeeds by building a mind that stays calm when everything around him shakes. He succeeds by developing an inner stillness that no storm can break. This inner stillness is not a gift. It is a discipline. It is a choice. It is a decision you make every day when you refuse to be moved by things that do not deserve your collapse. When you learn to stand in the storm, you become someone new. You become someone people look to for leadership, not because you control everything, but because nothing controls you. You become someone who inspires trust, not because your life is perfect, but because you are steady in its imperfection. You become someone who moves through chaos with clarity. Your emotions stop ruling you. Your worries stop choking your mind. You feel everything, but you are commanded by nothing. I, in my own storm, I discovered something I had never known. The rain was not my enemy. My reaction to it was. For years, I believed that if I could control the weather, I would find peace. But peace was never missing. Peace was simply buried beneath everything I was holding. The moment I stopped trying to dominate my circumstances was the moment I finally uncovered the calm that had been waiting inside me all along. Real peace does not come from clear skies. It comes from a clear mind. It comes from letting go of the comparisons that poison your confidence. It comes from releasing the self-criticism that drains your energy. It comes from refusing to replay regrets or worry about imagined futures. Peace reveals itself when you remove the noise that covers it. It appears when you subtract what is unnecessary. The most peaceful people you meet are not lazy or careless. They have simply stopped fighting the battles that are not theirs. They no longer chase the illusion of control. They choose composure instead. They move with purpose, not panic. They respond with clarity, not fear. They walk through storms without losing themselves. This is the power the storm cannot touch. This is the strength that comes from commanding yourself. This is the foundation upon which a new life can be built. And it begins the moment you stop demanding calm from the world and start becoming the calm yourself. If you want, I can now begin part 3, 1,000 words, with the same tone, storytelling style, and Napoleon Hill philosophy. Engaging hook for part 3. What if the peace you have been searching for is not something you gain by fighting harder, but something you uncover by letting go? What if the quiet strength you admire in others is not born from coldness, but from clarity? And what if the most powerful response you will ever give the world is not your voice, but your silence? Part 3. The discipline of letting go and the power of inner silence. There comes a point in life when a person begins to see the world differently. They stop walking into every conflict. They stop trying to win every argument. They stop chasing the approval that once felt necessary for survival. It is not because they have grown distant. It is because they have grown wise. They have dropped the weight that never belonged to them to carry. They have released the battles that were never theirs to fight. They have learned the simple truth that peace is not built by adding more effort. Peace is revealed by removing what destroys it. I discovered this during one of the most transformative years of my life. It began with discomfort that felt small at first, like a whisper beneath the noise of daily tasks. I felt a constant pull in many directions. Everyone expected something. Everyone wanted something. I tried to be everything for everyone. I tried to fix wounds that were not mine. I tried to meet expectations that others created without ever asking if I agreed. I carried the emotional baggage of people who had long refused to carry their own. I thought this made me strong. I thought this made me loyal. I thought this made me worthy. But slowly, something inside me began to break. I did not notice at first. I only felt the exhaustion. I felt the heaviness in my chest, the pressure behind my eyes, the quiet resentment building in the corners of my mind. I felt myself slipping from my own life. Then one morning, after a sleepless night spent replaying a conversation that should never have taken so much space in my thoughts, I realized something powerful. I had built my life around the expectations of others. I had allowed the noise of the world to drown out the voice of my own soul. Hill once wrote that no one succeeds while living according to another person's script. Success demands independence of mind, clarity of purpose, and mastery of emotion. In that moment, I understood what he meant. I had been living for others, not for myself. I needed to let go. And letting go would require discipline. The first step was to look honestly at my mind. I had to ask myself questions I had avoided for years. What memories kept me reliving old pain? What habits kept me replaying old fears? Who in my life stirred up chaos instead of calm? Which stories did I cling to only because they felt familiar even when they hurt? The answers were difficult to face. Some relationships were built on obligation, not love. Some friendships depended on my silence, not my truth. Some memories held me hostage because I never allowed myself to let them fade. But with each realization, I felt myself getting lighter. When you release what is not yours to hold, your hands finally become free to build something better. Detachment is often misunderstood. People will say you have changed. They will say you have grown cold. They will say your silence is an offense, your boundaries an act of cruelty. They will whisper that you are selfish because you are no longer available on command. But what they fail to see is that detachment is not a lack of emotion. Detachment is the absence of unnecessary attachment to things that destroy your peace. You can care deeply and still choose distance. You can love someone and still walk away when their chaos threatens your stability. You can hope for the best for people while refusing to be pulled into the storms they create. This is not coldness. This is clarity. There is a difference. And the difference may save your life. There came a season when I stopped explaining every choice I made. I stopped apologizing for boundaries that were necessary for my well-being. I refused to pick up guilt that was thrown at my feet. When conversations became toxic, I walked away quietly. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I did not plead. I simply removed myself from the noise. And for the first time, I felt a sense of freedom that no one else could give me. Hill wrote often about the power of controlling your thoughts. What he meant was that you cannot afford to let outside voices dictate your inner state. Detachment gives you that control. It filters out the noise. It protects your energy. It reminds you that not every emotion deserves a reaction, and not every problem is yours to solve. This is the rare wisdom that separates those who crumble from those who rise. Of course, letting go has a cost. You will lose people. Some will drift away when you stop performing for their approval. Some will walk out when you stop shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. And some will disappear when you stop giving more than you receive. But what you lose in company, you gain in clarity. You lose the confusion that once clouded your mind. You lose the drama that once drained your energy. You lose the exhaustion of carrying everyone's burden. And in their place, something extraordinary appears. You gain presence. You gain steadiness. You gain the ability to stand in chaos without being pulled into it. There is a moment when silence becomes your greatest strength. The world is filled with opinions that arrive quickly and leave slowly. Insults are thrown without thought. Criticisms spread with the ease of wildfire. You will be misunderstood and misjudged. You will be misquoted and misread. It is simply part of being alive and being seen. But not every misunderstanding needs your correction. Not every insult needs your defense. Not every attack needs your reaction. Most of what people say to you is a test of your discipline, not your strength. The question is not whether you can fight back, but whether you can remain unmoved. Silence is not weakness. Silence is restraint. Silence is strength. Silence is the steady mind that refuses to be pulled into chaos. Silence is mastery over your emotions. Anyone can react. Anyone can shout. Anyone can lash out in anger. But to stay calm, to stay centered, to stay silent when provoked, that is a rare power. I learned that sometimes the strongest message you can send is no message at all. Sometimes silence is a declaration. It says you no longer participate in unnecessary battles. It says your peace is not up for negotiation. It says you know your worth, and you refuse to let anyone diminish it. Your attention is a currency more valuable than money. You spend it every day on things that often do not matter. Arguments with strangers. Worries about imagined futures. Thoughts about people who hardly think of you at all. Most of these things deserve only your silence. A person who rises in self-discipline no longer reacts to every provocation. They feel emotion, but they do not obey every impulse. They experience anger, but they do not feed it. They hear noise, but they do not let it enter their mind. They allow the world to spin without losing their balance. This is the mastery I discovered. This is the discipline of letting go. This is the power of inner silence. And this is the path that leads to unshakable peace. If you want, I can now write part 4, 1,000 words, with the same tone and style. Engaging hook for part 4. There comes a moment in life when you stop chasing the noise of the world and begin listening to the quiet truth inside you. That moment does not arrive with fireworks or applause. It comes softly, like the steady closing of a door behind you. And when it comes, everything changes. Part 4. The power of inner stillness. Ethan always believed life was supposed to be loud. He grew up thinking success meant constant motion, constant talking, constant proving. In his early years he worked non-stop, responded to every message, defended himself against every criticism, and tried to keep up with everyone's expectations. His life felt like a crowded room with 100 voices speaking at once, each one demanding something from him. And he tried to answer them all. But the more he tried to keep up, the more exhausted he became. He noticed that while he moved faster, his peace slipped farther away. One evening, after a long and draining day at work filled with pointless meetings and emotional arguments, he sat alone in his small apartment and felt something break inside him. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was silence. A silence that felt new. A silence that felt like truth. He sat there with the lights off, staring at nothing. He remembered something his mentor once told him. A man cannot rise until he stops running from himself. At the time Ethan had laughed it off, thinking he understood it. But that night the words hit him with new meaning. Ethan realized that the greatest noise in his life was not coming from the outside world. It was coming from within him. His own thoughts argued with each other, replaying mistakes, worrying about tomorrow, reliving old wounds, inventing new fears. The real battle was not between him and anyone else. It was between him and the stories he had been telling himself for years. For the first time he asked himself a question he had been avoiding. What inside me is fighting my peace? He let the question sit in the room with him. No distractions. No explanations. No excuses. The answer came slowly, almost shyly. It was his need to control everything. His need to be understood. His need for approval. His need to win every argument and fix every situation. The truth was simple but painful. Ethan was tired of reacting to everything. Tired of explaining himself. Tired of holding on to people and situations that drained him. Tired of fighting battles that did not matter. His life was full of noise because he kept opening the door for it. The next morning Ethan made a decision that surprised even himself. He decided to stop responding to every voice around him. Not out of anger or revenge, but out of clarity. He understood something that would change his life forever. Silence is a form of strength. Not the silence of avoidance or fear, but the silence of someone who no longer needs to react in order to feel worthy. He started small. When someone criticized him unfairly at work, he let it pass. Not because it did not matter, but because he recognized that the criticism had more to do with them than with him. When a friend tried to pull him into drama, he stayed calm and simply did not participate. When someone misunderstood him, he no longer chased after them with long explanations. He let the misunderstanding end where it began. At first people were confused. Some thought he had changed. Some believed he was becoming cold. Some even tried to provoke him just to see if he would react. But Ethan stayed steady. He remembered that true peace is not given by others. It is claimed by you. The more he practiced silence, the stronger he felt. He began to see the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting was automatic. Responding required thought. Reacting drained his energy. Responding protected it. He also learned something Napoleon Hill spoke often about. A person cannot achieve greatness while living in emotional chaos. Discipline of the mind is the foundation of every success story. Ethan began training his mind the way a runner trains his body. He practiced holding back his first reaction. He learned to breathe before speaking. He listened more than he talked. He paid attention to what stirred chaos inside him and slowly removed those triggers from his life. One afternoon, his younger sister Emily visited him. She had always been close to him and had noticed the changes in his behavior. She asked gently if everything was all right. Ethan smiled and told her the truth. He had not become quieter because he was angry or distant. He had become quieter because he was finally at peace with himself. He told her something he had discovered in his journey. When you learn to silence the storms inside you, the storms outside cannot touch you. Emily looked at him curiously and asked how he had learned to do that. Ethan explained that silence was not something he found. It was something he created. Every time he chose not to react, not to argue, not to defend himself against every little thing, he strengthened his inner peace. It was like building a muscle. The more he practiced it, the stronger he became. In time, Ethan noticed a powerful shift. He began to attract calm people into his life. People who respected boundaries. People who valued emotional maturity. People who were not threatened by his growth. And those who thrived on drama slowly drifted away, not with conflict, but with quiet inevitability. There was one moment that showed him just how much he had changed. A co-worker tried to insult him during a meeting, hoping to embarrass him. In the past, Ethan would have jumped to defend himself. But now he simply looked at the person with calm eyes and said nothing. The room fell silent. The co-worker became uncomfortable. And within a few seconds, the tension dissolved. Ethan realized something important. Silence can be a mirror. It shows people their own behavior without you needing to say a single word. Ethan's life began to transform. He found he had more energy, more clarity, and more control over his decisions. He no longer felt pushed around by every mood, every message, every opinion. He understood the rare truth that most people never learn. Peace is not found. Peace is built. It is built through choices. It is built through silence. It is built through clarity. It is built when you decide that your attention is too expensive to waste. As Ethan sat on his balcony one evening, watching the sunset, he realized something powerful. He had not lost anything by choosing silence. He had gained himself. He had rediscovered the calm that had been buried under years of noise. And now he understood the secret Napoleon Hill hinted at in his writings. A disciplined mind is an unstoppable force. It bends reality. It shapes destiny. It builds greatness from the inside out. Ethan closed his eyes and let the quiet settle in his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt truly unshakable. And he knew that this was only the beginning. If you want, I can now write part 5 in the same style, tone, and 1,000-word structure. Engaging hook for part 5. Sometimes life does not change in loud, dramatic moments. Sometimes it changes in a single quiet decision. A choice so small it almost goes unnoticed. But that tiny choice becomes the turning point that redirects an entire life. This is the truth most people never see, but the truth that can transform everything. Part 5. The rise of inner authority. Ethan woke up one morning with a sense of clarity he had never felt before. It was not excitement or joy. It was something deeper. Something steady and strong. It was the awareness that he had crossed a line inside himself. A line that once crossed could never be crossed back. The man he used to be, the man who reacted to everything, who lived for approval, who felt responsible for everyone's emotions, no longer felt real. It was as if he had stepped out of an old skin and into a new one. He walked to the small kitchen in his apartment, made a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. The sun was still rising, painting the sky with a soft orange glow. He watched the light spread across the city and felt as if the world was making space for a new version of him. The silence around him felt different now. It was no longer heavy or lonely. It was a companion. A teacher. It reminded him that everything he needed to rise was inside him. For years Ethan thought power came from being loud, from proving himself, from pushing harder and harder. He believed success belonged to the ones who never rested, who never showed weakness, who always spoke up. But now he understood something Napoleon Hill had hinted at in many of his teachings. True power does not come from force. It comes from inner authority. It comes from knowing who you are and refusing to let the world shake you from that truth. That morning he opened his journal and wrote a sentence that surprised him. I no longer chase what does not belong to me. The words felt strong. They felt earned. They carried the weight of every lesson he had learned. He knew now that attention is a form of energy, and energy creates reality. If he wanted a stronger future, he had to stop feeding the wrong things. Later that day, he returned to work. His office felt the same desks and papers and people, but he felt different inside it. His coworkers noticed it immediately. The man who always tried to help everyone, who always explained himself, who always absorbed the stress around him, was not behaving the same. When someone attempted to pull him into unnecessary drama, he answered with calm simplicity. When a coworker complained loudly about a problem and tried to drag Ethan into frustration, he listened politely but did not join the emotional chaos. He had learned to remain steady, and that steadiness made him stand out. Some people were confused by his calm. Others respected it. A few felt threatened by it. Those who thrived on noise and conflict sensed they could no longer shake him, and they did not like it. One coworker even tried to embarrass him during a meeting by blaming him for something he did not do. In the past, Ethan would have defended himself with a long explanation, his voice tight with frustration. But now he simply stated the truth once and let the silence do the rest. No anger. No over-explaining. No emotional reaction. To everyone's surprise, the silence made the truth clearer than any argument could have. The coworker looked foolish for trying to provoke him, and Ethan walked out of the meeting with his confidence intact. That day he learned a powerful lesson. People lose their grip on you when you stop reacting. Silence can remove the fuel from someone else's fire. It can shift the energy of an entire room. As the weeks passed, Ethan discovered that inner authority is built through small choices repeated daily. It is built every time you choose peace over impulse. Every time you choose clarity over confusion. Every time you choose your values over the pressure to please others. It is not a single moment of courage. It is the persistent practice of self-control. One evening he met with his mentor, Mr. Donovan, a quiet man who spoke with the calm certainty of someone who understood himself. They sat across from each other in a small diner, the kind with warm lights and old wooden tables. Ethan told him about the changes he had made. The moments where silence had protected him. The situations where his calm had shifted the energy around him. The way he felt more powerful without raising his voice. Mr. Donovan smiled knowingly and said something Ethan would never forget. When you master your own emotions, the world begins to move around your decisions instead of your reactions. That sentence hit Ethan with unexpected force. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was leading his own path instead of being pulled by it. On his way home that night, Ethan understood that he had stepped into a new chapter of his life. A chapter that required strength, not the loud strength of aggression, but the quiet strength of inner discipline. He saw clearly that most people never rise because they are trapped in constant reaction. They believe they must fight every battle. They believe they must respond to every critic. They believe they must prove themselves again and again. But he had learned the opposite. Mastery begins when you stop letting the world push your buttons. The next day, Ethan faced another test. A family member called him with complaints and anger, hoping he would fix everything as he had always done in the past. He listened with compassion, but he no longer felt responsible for their chaos. He did not jump in to solve all their problems. He did not take their frustration personally. He offered support, but he did not sacrifice his peace. When the call ended, he felt something powerful rise within him. It was the realization that boundaries are not walls. They are doors that keep your peace from leaking away. As his inner authority grew, something unexpected began to happen. Opportunities that once felt far out of reach started appearing. His manager noticed his calm presence and offered him a chance to lead a project. His relationships began to shift into healthier shapes. His mind felt clearer than it had in years. It was as if the universe had been waiting for him to stop giving his energy to chaos so that it could redirect it toward purpose. Ethan became more intentional with his days. He woke up early, spent time in reflection, and set clear intentions. He practiced gratitude. He read books that fed his mind. Most importantly, he continued choosing silence over unnecessary reaction. He learned to pause before responding, to breathe before speaking, to think before acting. Each small choice shaped him into a stronger version of himself. One morning as he walked to work, he felt a quiet truth settle inside him. He had discovered a new kind of strength. Not the kind that comes from force or effort, but the kind that comes from alignment. The kind that comes from living in harmony with your purpose. The kind that grows when you stop wasting yourself on things that do not matter. He realized that inner authority is not something you earn from the world. It is something you claim from within. It is a choice, a practice, a way of being. And he knew that he was only beginning to understand its power. Ethan took a deep breath and smiled. The man he was becoming felt real, solid, unbreakable. And he was ready for the next step in his journey. If you want, I can now write part 6, the final chapter, with an inspiring ending and a powerful call to action. Engaging hook for part 6, final part. There are moments in life when a single decision becomes the turning point. A moment when you finally say, this is it, I am done living below my potential, I am ready for the life I was meant to live. And sometimes that moment comes not when everything is going right, but when everything seems to be falling apart. Part 6. Final part. The morning after Daniel's breakthrough was strangely quiet. No storms. No dramatic signs. Just a calm sunrise that felt like the world was opening its doors for him. He sat on his porch holding a warm cup of coffee and noticed something he had never seen before. For the first time in years he felt proud of himself. It was not because success had arrived. It was because he finally understood why it had not arrived earlier. He had spent years blaming others, blaming circumstances, blaming luck. But now he saw clearly that the greatest battle was inside him, and he had finally started to win it. That morning Daniel made a promise to himself. He said, from today forward I will never let my mind become my prison again. Whatever I want to achieve, I will train my thoughts to support it. I will think success, speak success, and act like success long before I see it in reality. This was the moment he understood one of Napoleon Hill's greatest truths. Your mind is the only real estate you fully control. And the person who controls their mind controls their destiny. Daniel grabbed his notebook filled with pages of goals, affirmations, and ideas he had written over the last months. He flipped through the pages and realized something beautiful. Every major change he had experienced began on paper. A single idea written with belief had turned into action. And action had turned into progress. He decided to test something. He wrote a massive goal on a fresh page. It was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. A goal that scared him a little. But instead of doubting it, his heart started beating with excitement. He remembered Hill's teachings that a goal should stretch the soul, not shrink it. Daniel closed the notebook and got in his car. He drove to the tallest hill in the city, a place he used to visit as a teenager when dreams felt easier. From the top he could see the entire town. The houses, the streets, the shops. Everything looked small from up there. And he realized something important. The problems he thought were huge were also small from this point of view. He stood there with the wind brushing against his face, and said out loud, I am no longer the man I used to be. I am no longer shaped by my fears. I am guided by my purpose. And my purpose is bigger than my past. Weeks passed and Daniel started acting like the person he wanted to become. He woke up early, planned his day, practiced gratitude, studied personal development, surrounded himself with ambitious people, and stayed laser-focused on his goals. Everything he did was aligned with the future he was building. It did not mean life became easy. Some days were hard. Some days he felt tired. Some days old doubts tried to return. But this time he did not let them stay. He understood that success is not built by eliminating negative thoughts but by refusing to feed them. Anytime a doubt entered his mind, he replaced it with a powerful truth. I can handle this. I am growing stronger. I am becoming the person I need to be. Slowly the world around him began to change. His confidence grew. Opportunities appeared. People began to respect him. And most importantly, he started to respect himself. He was no longer waiting for permission to succeed. He had finally given himself permission. Months later, Daniel achieved the massive goal he wrote on that clean white page. It did not happen by luck. It happened by alignment. His thoughts matched his actions. His actions matched his beliefs. And his beliefs matched the life he wanted. One evening he sat alone watching the sunset. A soft orange glow spread across the sky. He remembered the man he used to be, confused, frustrated, and lost. Then he looked at the man he had become, disciplined, focused, and unshakably confident. He realized something powerful. Nobody had saved him. No mentor, no miracle, no lucky break. He saved himself by taking control of the only thing he ever truly owned, his mind. He whispered thank you to the universe, not for the success he achieved but for the strength he discovered inside himself. A strength that was there all along, waiting for him to wake it up. As the sky darkened, Daniel made one final promise. I will spend the rest of my life teaching others what I have learned. Because the world changes one awakened mind at a time. And that was the moment his story transformed into his mission. He was no longer just chasing success. He was building a legacy. A legacy born from the very teachings you have followed throughout this journey. The teachings that remind us that every great achievement begins with a single thought. Your mind is the master key. Your belief is the engine. Your persistence is the fuel. And your purpose is the map that guides you. Daniel reached the end of his journey, but your journey is just beginning. The life you want, the person you want to become, the dreams you want to achieve are already waiting for you. All you need to do is do what Daniel did. Decide. Commit. And never give up. The world belongs to those who believe deeply, act boldly, and refuse to let fear write their story. Now the question is simple. Will you rise? Will you step into your greatness? Will you become the master of your destiny? Your future begins the moment you choose it. If this story inspired you, do not keep it to yourself. Like, share, comment, and subscribe so more people can awaken their potential and transform their lives. Your support helps this message reach the world.